Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be showing you ILNP's first collection of the year called Flower Shop. This is a little studio color quad that captures the romance of fresh blooms and thoughtful gestures. Alongside these polishes is also launching their very first limited edition nail art stickers. These will essentially be a gift with purchase where they're only going to be available if you buy the full 4-piece collection while supplies last. And according to ILNP, they may not be restocked once they're gone. So we will talk a little bit more about that at the end. For now, let me just show you the swatches. Starting with the pinks, the first shade we have is Blossom, and this one is described as a vintage rose. I would say that's pretty color accurate, and as you can see, the formula on this and the rest of the shades is just so impeccable. It was extremely full coverage on the first coat, very easy and smooth to apply. I didn't feel like these were chalky at all, and as you can see, they have a really glossy kind of finish, so I almost felt like they were a little bit on the crully side, but while being very pigmented, if that makes sense. So either way, I got full coverage in just 2 coats alone, and for my full hand swatch, I'm showing it with a glossy top coat as well. It's just a lovely color. I'm always going to be a sucker for these lipstick pink kind of shades. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like this does look a little bit darker on the nails than it does in the bottle. At least it was most noticeable here in lower lighting. The other pink is called Fleur, and this is a soft petal pink. So yes, I will be showing comparisons soon, don't worry, but this one had another flawless formula. It was just so impressive with how smooth and full coverage it was. When it comes to really light pastel shades like this, they tend to either be very thin and streaky where it needs 2 or maybe 3 coats to even out, or they can be on the thicker side, which makes them feel a little bit more chalky, but this just felt so smooth. It is entirely possible that with more use, like maybe once I get halfway down the bottle, it can get a little bit thicker and then require thinner, but I just don't think it's necessary straight out of the bottle. And yeah, I'm sure many people are gonna say this is a very basic shade, but you know I love a soft baby pink. I feel like it's such a cute palette cleanser. Then for the greens, the first one here is called Secret Garden, and this one is described as a sage green. I can definitely see that, but before reading the descriptions, I would have called this more of a jade green, where I feel like it has a little bit of this blue undertone, or maybe like a dusty jade color. It's just slightly different than what I would expect for a sage, if that makes sense, but either way, the color is still so beautiful, and as expected, the formula is too. It was extremely full coverage on the first coat alone, where I wouldn't necessarily call it a one coater, but to be completely honest, if my nails were shorter and I was in a rush, I probably would just wear it in one coat. But of course, I am showing this in 2 coats with glossy top coat. And yeah, I really love the shade of green. I think it's so soothing. I love how it's like a lighter shade, almost like a pastel, but way more vibrant. And rounding out the collection is Just Because, which is described as a blue emerald. So I definitely was interested by this one because at first I thought it was a dark green, but as you can see, it definitely has a very strong blue undertone. I know it's described as a blue emerald, so they're on the nose with the blue, but I honestly feel like you could just call this a teal shade. Definitely a very dark kind of teal, maybe more of a jewel tone or something. But it is beautiful, just a lot more blue than I was expecting for this quad. And as you saw, this was also fully opaque in 2 coats. The first coat was a little bit thinner. I think I just didn't grab as much polish on the brush, so you can kind of see that slightly crully formula I mentioned with Blossom. But because the shade is so dark, it's easily opaque in just 2 coats. I'm honestly not sure how I feel about this shade. I don't think I love it as a full hand mani, at least on its own, but in the quad, I do really like it. I think there's something so satisfying about these colors together. I mean, they just invoke these images of florals, so I'm a sucker for that. And here is a closer look at the limited edition Flower Shop nail art stickers, a part of this launch. On the back are these simple directions, making sure your nails are dry, using tweezers for application. And yeah, I think these stickers are super cute. I love the actual designs. There's not many, it is just this one single sheet, and there's not many repeating stickers. Here I'm showing my pinky nail, which is my shortest, smallest nail, obviously, just so you can kind of get an idea of the size. Most stickers can fit within my nail. There are a few that are a little bit wider, I think, but that's just for my pinky. Something else I noticed though is that these stickers are slightly raised, almost having this like textured or 3D effect. I feel like it's kind of hard to capture it on camera, so apologies for the awkward angle, but hopefully you can see they are just ever so slightly raised, and it's only the actual design itself. There is a little clear outline for the sticker adhesive part, which isn't raised. So here I'm using my Deco Beauty tweezers, which are these very sharp tweezers specifically for nail art stickers or charms or something, and I found it a little bit hard to pull off that first bouquet. I don't know if I was just scared of ripping them, but it felt like they were a little extra stuck to the sheet. But once I got it off the tweezers and onto my nail, it was perfectly fine. The other side of the tool comes with a rubber stopper, but you could also use your finger. Again, you want to make sure your nails are dry, and gently press in around the edges. So here I applied 2 little heart stickers to the sides, and I'm showing this without top coat so you can hopefully see the slightly raised texture of the designs. I know some people might not love that. I feel like there could be a use for, some texture to your nail art, because I was impressed with how well the edge of the sticker actually melted in with the base of the nail. And of course, I am also going to be showing this with a thick coat of ILNP's Glass Candy top coat, and it was okay. I think maybe I would do 2 coats because, again, since the design is just ever so slightly raised, you can kind of see it doesn't give the smoothest even surface that you might get with other nail art stickers that aren't raised. Moving on to comparisons, we're starting with Blossom, and of course looking at it next to a couple of Holo taco creams like Nip in the Bud, which was from last year's cottagecore collection. But I also pulled out Low-Key Blushing because I thought the shade of pink would be a little bit more similar, but all 3 of these are just wildly different. Maybe Low-Key Blushing is closer in value because Nip in the Bud is just much more muted and lighter in color. So then I thought maybe Olive Ave's Terracotta would be a little bit closer, but this was actually closer to Low-Key Blushing, just being a little bit more of this orangey coral undertone. So again, definitely not dupes. When it came to closer lipstick pink shades, I thought Essie Stones and Roses was going to be a better match. It kind of looks similar in the bottle, just like lighter, but there's a bigger difference when you see them on the nail. I think the Essie also has a slightly coral undertone, but it's just much brighter. Blossom almost looks mauvey in comparison. Then for Fleur, I wanted to show this next to Mittens, which was the dusty pink from the Snow Day collection this past winter, but that one is several shades darker, more of like a muted mauve. When I first saw Fleur, I immediately thought of Soulmate, which was the pink ivory from last year's Valentine's Day trio. I was honestly kind of shocked to see this pink this year, but it is definitely a bit more pink than Soulmate is, though I don't know how many of you guys would justify having both of these. Then I have a couple of Holo taco creams like Rosemary Kill from last year's cottagecore collection and Sweet Tooth, which was from their ice cream bundle. I forget the name exactly. Also, don't mind the colors here in this clip because they're just not picking up accurate. For whatever reason, they look super desaturated and gray. They're much more color accurate here on the nail, but I would say Fleur is the closest to Rosemary Kill, just a couple shades lighter. And then for mainstream shades, the closest that I have is OPI's Let's Be Friends, which is a very, very whitened pink kind of color. I really thought this was going to be a close match, but on the nail, it does look almost white next to the ILNP shade. So for reference, I did also do a little swipe of ILNP's Canvas, which is a pure white cream, just so you can see the whisper of pink that's in the OPI shade. Moving on to Secret Garden, here it is next to the two greens from Holo Taco's Cottagecore collection. We have Time After Time on the left and Touch Grass on the right. At first, I thought Secret Garden, especially being described as a sage, was going to be much closer to Time After Time, which I think is a more accurate sage green color, but it's also kind of similar to Touch Grass, having this almost blue undertone, just several shades lighter. So honestly, the ILNP is kind of a perfect in-between of these two Holo Taco greens. And for a mainstream color, the closest that I had in my collection is Essie's Caught in the Rain, which is, I think, another sage green sort of shade, but this one is much more gray leaning. I feel like in the bottle, they look deceptively similar, but not dupes at all. Lastly, for Just Because, I wanted to quickly show it next to Cracked Polish's Teal Dark and Handsome, which is a true teal shade. It's much darker, a little bit more blue leaning as well. So for other blue emerald sort of shades, I also pulled out Essie's Unguilty Pleasures and OPI's My Studios on Spring. And similar to the other cream comparisons, I would say that Just Because is kind of a really nice in-between of these other two, because the Essie is a little bit lighter, the OPI is a few shades darker, maybe that one is slightly more green leaning as well. So yeah, unfortunately not dupes. And lastly, for color reference, here it is next to Unwrapped, which is from the Santa's Workshop collection. It is obviously a different finish, but slightly darker color-wise too. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of ILNP's Flower Shop collection. As always, I would love to know what you think of these releases because I'm really loving them. I was definitely excited to see that we're getting a quad this year compared to the previous trios over the last couple of years that we've gotten for Valentine's Day. And I just like that this is a slightly different approach to the color story or theme compared to the previous years too, but it still has that focus on like romance and flowers. So, you know, it's still Valentine's Day without being too on the nose, I think. And as a Libra and hopeless romantic, I am just eating them up. You know, I love pinks and greens, and the formulas on these were just objectively amazing. So this is like a chef's kiss launch all around. Even for the nail art stickers, I do think they are really cute. Like, I can't stress enough how much I love the actual designs on them. I'm mostly a little apprehensive about them because they are like limited edition. As I mentioned, they are essentially like a gift with purchase where they're only going to be available in limited supplies if you buy the full collection. They're not going to be sold separately, and according to ILNP's email, they said they may not be restocked once they sell out, so it kind of leaves room that they could be. I'm assuming depending on like the demand, you know, if there's enough people really asking for more stickers from them. So I'm really curious to hear what you all think about them, because like I mentioned, even though they are slightly raised or textured, I don't think that they're bad by any means. I definitely would be more curious though to see if they do bring them back to sell, would they still only be like this one little sheet, because it is kind of small, but it does make sense for a freebie with this release while they kind of figure out like how popular they are. So I would just love to hear your thoughts down below. As a reminder too, this collection is going to be launching on Friday, January 16th. So I will have ILNP's website linked in the description box. But yeah, I would love to hear if you plan on picking any of these up or if you'll be skipping them altogether. From what you saw in my comparisons, I didn't really have any exact dupes for these, but I feel like for the most part, they could be duped, especially with other mainstream brands. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there are some other other Zoyas or Essies or OPI shades that are closer, especially to the two pinks in here. I know generally these types of pink shades are overlooked, so I'm curious to know if you're gonna be getting them, if you're interested in the greens or whatnot. So let me know any and all thoughts you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.